I have with me Frederick Obermeier, an investigative reporter with Suddeutsche Zeitung, one of the largest newspapers in Germany. Frederick has been a lead investigator even in the previous Panama Papers disclosures that a bunch of newspapers across the world worked on. And Frederick has been very closely involved with Paradise Papers as well. Hi Frederick, and today Frederick is a Nieman Fellow at Harvard, and on a year-long sabbatical from his newspaper, but is still associated with the project. Frederick, tell me something about the Paradise Papers. How different is it from Panama Papers?
Well, first let's start about what is similar. It's a leak about tax haven, about offshore companies. But then start the differences. Actually, it's not only one leak, it's several leaks. Because the Paradise Papers are data from two offshore providers, from two companies that set up and run and administer offshore companies. And it contains the data from 19 company registries from 19 tax havens. Among them, one of the most secretive tax havens of the world.
Yeah, and in terms of just the quantum of information that has become available to the consortium, can you just tell us how big the quantum is?
Well, during the Panama Papers were more than 2 terabytes of data. Now we are speaking about the Paradise Papers more than 1 terabyte of data. So it's a little bit, from the data perspective, a little bit less.
Yeah.
But it's still millions of files, and it contains information about millions of individuals and millions of companies.
Yeah.
So for us as investigative journalists, this is like, wow, because you can find so many different stories in it, and different links to so many people from so many parts of the world.
Right. But even in this, I think it is about one big company, which is a giant company incorporated, just like in the case of Panama Papers. That is a huge similarity. Of course, in Panama Papers you had Mossack Fonseca, and here you have Appleby, which seems to the outside world as another company, but which is much more rigorous in its, say, due diligence exercise.
Well, when we published the Panama Papers, the whole offshore industry, they said, basically tried to brand Mossack Fonseca as the black sheep.
Yeah.
And Appleby is one of the companies that they claim they are the good ones. They are part of the so-called offshore magic circle.
Yeah.
But having now the possibility to look into their business, it shows that they are not that clean and that due diligent as they should be, that they are still doing business with guys, individuals, companies that, in my opinion, a company like that shouldn't do.
Yeah. And tell me something about what happened post Panama Papers. There has been some skepticism across the world about whether governments or jurisdictions across the world are serious about following up on the investigation that Panama Papers actually did. So even in India, I think the government did take serious note of the revelations by the Indian Express. But these processes are generally slow and long-winding because of, say, not such enthusiastic cooperation from the tax havens. So what has been your experience in Germany? What has been the experience in Germany?
Well, first, in Germany we saw what we always saw in previous leaks as well, like politicians standing up, like demanding more transparency. But then we saw like nothing big happening. But the pressure from the public stayed up. So there was a pressure on the politicians, so they moved. They changed laws. We have now a better register, transparency register.
Yeah.
But still, there could be done more. Investigators, we realized that investigators approached us, for example, asking for information, and we denied to give them, to get them out information. But we realized in these discussions that some of them haven't even read the articles that we published. And I think from an investigator, you could expect that, at least from one who claims that he really wants to investigate that stuff.
Yeah.
But we do see now several investigations running, several hundreds in Germany.
Yeah.
And what we hear from the investigators is they are doing good. They found already proof for wrongdoing. They are preparing lawsuits, indictments currently.
Yeah.
And they're setting up like task forces to work with other countries,
Yeah.
with the authorities of other countries, and I think that's a good step.
Yeah.
And in that regards, I think that investigators learn a little bit from investigative journalists,
Yeah, yeah.
because we all teamed up. We
That's-
also learned that it's not enough to work as a German team on such a big leak,
Yeah.
but that we need to work as an international team, because I, as a German journalist, do not know all the details, for example, of Indian politics, of Indian economy, who
Yeah.
are the big and important people in India.
Right.
So it was logical for us to team up with journalists from your newspaper.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I think it's only logical for investigators to team up as well.
Team of us. Yeah, one thing which I think any reader of a newspaper is generally interested is about, say, where does this information come from? Who's leaked this information to you? Is there a vested interest? Even last in Panama Papers, there were questions about why this leak did not include any big people from the United States. So how has it been for you to tell your readers, or even amongst the investigative community, what has been the chatter?
Well, I think for us it is always, I do understand the curiosity of our readers, basically what they want to know where the information comes from, and we as journalists are obliged to protect our sources, so we couldn't tell more during the Panama Papers, and we won't tell more now with our new project, the Paradise Papers, because as a general policy of Suddeutsche Zeitung, we don't speak about our sources. I hope you understand.
Yeah, of course. But in terms of, say, how you got the information, or how you processed the information about the time that it took for Suddeutsche Zeitung and for other members, how has been the collaborative process itself for you?
Well, we also, for the same reason, we do not go into detail when, on which way we received the data.
Yeah.
But what I can say is that it was a long process. So I'm working on this for over a year now.
Yeah.
And because at the beginning, we at Süddeutsche Zeitung, after receiving documents and information, we first wanted to fact check it, to double check it, to prove that we have a good feeling of sharing it.
Yeah.
And then when we shared it with the ICAJ and thus with other newspapers, the whole process started again, because all of them did their checks.
Yeah.
They did their fact checks. They spoke with their sources, the sources they have within financial industry, for example, or within authorities.
Yeah.
They checked it with official records.
Yeah.
And that's a long process. And in parallel, you always look for stories. But how do you start with more than 1 terabyte of data? That's millions of files.
Yeah.
So we had, in the beginning, what we do in such investigations is we run lists against the data. For example, we have long lists, for example, about all the members of parliament of Germany in the past till now, and we search for them.
Yeah.
Because that's a possible story, because in Germany you have to declare if you have an interest in a company, either, no matter if it's in Germany or in a tax haven.
Yeah.
So that was a start. And we have different lists now. For example, we have lists on actually any major scandal happening in Germany or having happened in Germany,
Yeah.
all involved individuals and companies, and
Yeah.
we run it against the data, because
Yeah.
sometimes you find a missing link in the data, and we found missing links in the Panama Papers as well as in the Paradise Papers, and
Yeah.
that's the stories we are publishing.